Hi guys, Yuki here back with Seduce Me 2, the Demon War Sam's Route Part 2. We are going to go train with Sergeant, so let's get to it. I chose to train with Sergeant. He seemed to be skilled in combat and he was the commander of the main army, so I trusted him to train me to be strong and dependable. I didn't want to be a silent observer in this war. I would pull my own weight. Sergeant led me outside of the castle onto an empty training ground. Footprints and wear showed that the space was well used, but the only ones in the area at the moment was Sergeant and myself. The air seemed fresh, and the faint smell of flowers and fauna swept past my nose. However, I didn't get time to enjoy the atmosphere.
Human, I will not waste my breath hollering at you like a soldier, but I expect you to listen like one. Now stop sniffing the air and face me.
I think he has some sort of spell too to make people listen to him, like, since that's what happened previously. Kind of was like, what are you doing here? And we basically answered, we're just looking around. But yeah, and I apologize if I'm being soft, it's just that people are watching movies in the other room and I don't want to be too loud. I quickly nodded and turned around to face Sergeant. I pressed my arms to my sides, ready at attention for my next order. Sergeant stared hard at me, making me slightly nervous. How was he going to train me? Sergeant began to slowly walk around my body, letting his eyes trail up and down my form in an analytical gaze. I stood still, not sure if he wanted me to follow along, and knowing he would command me to move if I needed to. He remained silent, walking in circles around me like a slowly encroaching vulture. I felt a twinge of irritation at his lack of action. I was supposed to be training. What are you doing? Sergeant let out a small chuckle as he finally came around in front of me.
Weak, but still workable.
What? I was majorly confused. Was he calling me weak? I felt a small spark of anger bubble in my core as I glared at Sergeant. What is that supposed to mean? Sergeant smirked a bit as he crossed his arms over his chest in an almost prideful show of dominance.
That means you're weak, but still workable. You're not a fighter, and you're not strong enough to defend yourself.
Alright. I would say otherwise, but I'm willing to get better at whatever strengths or weaknesses I have. The anger in my stomach boiled, and soon I was gritting my teeth at Sergeant. Was this really happening? Why was he being such an ass? What the hell? Over at my anger, Sergeant seemed to nod, almost smile a bit.
There it is. Took a bit.
Oh, so he's just trying to get me angry. What are you talking about?
Rage.
Oh. What, rage? Was I supposed to be angry? I continued to glare at Sergeant, unsure what he was going with this.
Rage is a form of raw energy, wild like fire and tamed with patience. If used properly, rage can be very deadly. Very few demons can harness it, but brute demons are the masters of rage.
I felt a little enlightened. Rage was also a form of energy? I felt a small spark in my core, remembering how angry I was with Sergeant, and mentally noted that what I felt could be trapped into rage energy instead of just felt as a regular emotion. Sergeant cracked his neck and let out a small sigh.
However, since you're a human, there's no guarantee that you can truly use your rage in battle. This is just a test to see what you can do.
What if I can't harness it?
Then you're shit out of luck. I don't have the time or patience to train you like a regular soldier, human. Now is your only chance not to fuck it up.
Oh well, I hope I don't do that again. I'm trying to at least stay with my trainer this time around. I gulped silently. This was my only chance to try it? It definitely seemed like a challenge, but was I really up for it? Sergeant shook his head.
Humans are really easy to read. Don't doubt yourself just yet, human. You haven't even started.
Well, it's kind of hard when you're basically like, yeah, if you only have one shot, so better make it count. Kind of feels like putting me down, but I guess he's just trying to be supportive. Looking up at Sergeant, I could tell that he was being genuine. Still, I wasn't sure that my headphones keep falling. Or more like earbuds. I have small ears. Looking at Sergeant, I could tell that he was being genuine. Still, I wasn't sure that I was even able to do what he expected me to do. What could rage energy do anyway? I guess I would have to wait and learn. Sergeant rolled his shoulders and held out his hand, pointing at a training dummy that was set up in the middle of the field. Are we gonna learn fire? That'd be cool. But no, he's just using like basically punches and kicks and stuff. It was set up in the middle of the field. As his hand hovered in the air, it began to slowly emanate a red aura. I stared wide at it as it began to grow in intensity.
Watch closely, human.
So are we gonna learn how to do it? Sounds kind of cool. Soon a black orb formed right in front of his open palm, wrapped with dark red lightning that seemed to arc over its surface. The orb grew larger and larger with each second that passed. As I looked over at Sergeant, I noticed his eyes were glowing a dark gold. His expression was full of anger, but his body was opposing the emotion on his face with a calm and concentrated stance. When the orb finally reached the size of a basketball, Sergeant pulled his hand with the orb back behind his body and then thrust it forward, releasing the orb at its target. Like a lightning bolt, the orb flew forward and slammed into the training dummy, ripping it from the rod that was holding it up. However, Sergeant suddenly vanished from his spot and reappeared right in front of the flying dummy. Oh! What the? With a swift kick, Sergeant sent the dummy flying through the surrounding sprout forest. The unfortunate dummy slammed and nearly exploded against the base of a tree, breaking apart into pieces as it landed. I was shaking just from the sight. How did he... Sergeant landed on the ground and turned back to me, walking away from the result of his attack. He cracked his hands and rolled his head, stretching it as if he was just warming up. That was the... Cool. Sergeant chuckled as he finally stopped walking. It was true, though. He was faster than I could catch, and powerful enough to practically demolish the dummy. I was curious to see what he could do when he wasn't just training or showing off. Sergeant then pointed to a second dummy and ushered me forward.
Now, focus on your rage. You felt it already, but you need to rekindle it and capture it in your hand.
My hand? Sergeant nodded before reaching over and lifting my arm up, positioning it like how he did when he attacked his first dummy. It clicked. He wanted me to do the same thing he did. I looked at the back of my hand, suddenly nervous. Would I be able to do the same thing he did? He was already trained in this and knew what to do. I was practically jumping into this without a life jacket. My nerves began to dance around and fear shook my core. Even still, was rage something I really wanted to try and use? It seemed like it was some sort of volatile power, dangerous and deadly if not controlled properly. More so, if I got used to my rage, would I become dependent on it? Was this something I really wanted to do? Yes. If Sergeant believed I could control it, then I had to believe in him. He was a master of that kind of power, so he would know better than me. I focused on the back of my hand, concentrating on trying to replicate Sergeant's attack. I tried imagining a black orb appearing over my palm and watching it grow, but nothing came in reality. I began to get frustrated.
Don't focus on the attack. Focus on your rage. Fuel it with reason and you will control it.
The burning flame in my gut began to flicker, reminding me of the anger I felt before. I quickly latched onto it, tightening my stomach and focused on making it burn brighter. I had to fuel it somehow. Think of... Oh... I hope... Oh... I can do this. Think of the Demon Lord. It's gonna be a bad one, but, I felt myself begin to think about the Demon Lord. The bastard brought me here all for spite, and I was trapped here until we killed him. I was sick just from imagining his laughter, his dark voice in the air. The more he spoke, the more I wanted to end him with my own hands. I wanted to seal his fate myself and use my anger to show him who was stronger. I was forced to remain in this world, and I couldn't do anything about it until we met face to face. I wanted to go home, but my... What? Oh, my asshole soon-to-be father-in-law trapped me here. Okay, I was confused. The more I thought of it, the more the flames within me grew. My body became warm and heat surged through my veins in response. Soon, my vision began clouded in a ruby haze, as if I was looking at the world through foggy red goggles. However, one thing that I was able to focus on was the dummy ahead of me, between my fingers glowing in a strange black aura. Was this how brute demons saw their enemies? The energy in my body began to slowly weave into my hand, forming a baseball-sized orb that slowly became bigger and bigger with each breath I took. I could hear Sergeant smirk behind me in pride. As the energy in the orb became almost too large to hold, I felt my body completely tense up, and strange winds began to pick up around my body. I quickly brought the orb back and roughly pushed it forward towards my target.
Now run at it!
Okay. As I had a shout, I quickly stepped forward. I began to hyper-focus onto the dummy as my orb slammed into the torso and bent it backward over its stand. I felt enraged that I wasn't able to break it off, adding to the energy burning within my body. I wanted to kick the shit out of it. I wanted to make it bust open like a piñata. If I had to do it with my own foot, then I would do it over and over until it was completely decimated, like how Sergeant Elf dealt with his own training dummy. I suddenly came face to face with it as I rushed at it. I brought my leg back and slammed it into the dummy's head, ripping it from its torso. The head flew back a couple of feet and skidded across the ground before rolling to a stop by the foot of a tree. Oh no, my fury became out of control. I found myself becoming livid at the results of my attack, causing me to pummel a flurry of punches into the remaining dummy torso, making it bounce off and slam itself onto each impact. I can't do it. My knuckles and fingers were aching from each impact as waves of pain rushed through them. I didn't give a damn, nor could I find any reason. Oh, this is really bad. And my mind became lost in my rage that I continued to take it out on my non-living victim.
Hey!
Yeah, calm down. From behind, a pair of large arms hooked themselves up from my torso and yanked me back, locking their hands behind my head and effectively holding my flailing and twitching arms in place. Still, the blood-red tint of the world didn't dull, and my anger wasn't going away. I was pretty sure that I was foaming at the mouth, but my overwhelming fury overcame all of my senses.
Breathe, you little brute!
Well, thanks. My instincts began to kick in, forcing me to take in hard and deep breaths. With each inhale, my body became racked with shivering lactic acid, and with each exhale, the flames within my core began to slowly die. That was not good. After what seemed like minutes within Sergeant's arm lock, the red within my eyes vanished, and even the dribble around my lips seemed to have vanished, leaving me an aching mess of a being and causing me to slightly go limp in Sergeant's arms.
There you go. Geez, you've got a lot of energy for a human.
I've been told that multiple times. I slowly looked back at Sergeant, and he released me and stretched one of my arms up, causing my shoulder to creak and stretch out the ache within it. I felt a bit embarrassed at what I had done, but as Sergeant stretched my other arm, he laughed.
At least we can skip to teaching you how to control your rage.
Good, because that was... No, I did not... I'm a pacifist. How do I do that? I felt out of breath as my body became overwhelmed with a dull ache, probably from me letting loose on the dummy. Sergeant gently tilted my head side to side to stretch my neck before running his knuckles over my back, working out the unknown knots in it. Oh, really? That's really weird.
Just breathe. When you're pissed, you take a step back and breathe. It's the same thing when using rage.
It seemed so simple, but if it got me out of the state I was in, then it was good enough to agree with and nod in understanding.
Everything going fine out here?
I don't know. I'm kind of scared myself. Sergeant and I looked over to see Diana walking over to us from the castle door, crossing her arms and staring at us both.
We're good. We're just getting started.
That's good to hear. I'm on my way to the training block now to work with the troops and just wanted to stop by.
As Diana nodded in turn, Sergeant suddenly stepped away from me towards her.
Succubus!
Doubting my skills as a leader already, Commander?
I stared wide as Diana turned her head and looked at the Sergeant with a stern and almost a grating gaze. What the hell? Where did that come from? Just because he's a brute demon like the demon lord doesn't mean you gotta be mean to him. Sergeant stared right back at her, but I could very faintly see his hand glow a soft layer of red before he closed his eyes and let it vanish with a breath.
No, I wasn't.
Then what is it?
Nothing.
Sergeant turned back to me and crossed his arms, obviously irritated at Diana, but somehow unwilling to fight her about whatever was on his mind. As Sergeant turned away from her, Diana shook her head and started to walk away.
You forget who trained the rebellion before you came around.
Still being rude. Diana finally left, disappearing into the forest. Sergeant, however, maintained a stoned, agitated facial expression. That was uncalled for, but it put a little perspective on things. She trained the rebellion before he came and took on the role of army commander. Sergeant shook his head.
Some training you did back then, succubus.
Sergeant? Sergeant lifted his head to look at me before letting out a sigh.
What?
I'm not gonna push it. You'll tell me when you're ready. Are we going to continue? He seemed a little aggravated, so I wanted to take his mind off of Diana and focus on training. Sergeant nodded, uncrossing his arms and cracking his neck slightly. We continued to train through the day, switching between controlling my rage and letting it loose on a training dummy or even a tree. The longer I went at it, the easier it became to control myself and come out of a frenzied state of mind. By the end of the training, I was able to do Sergeant's moves just without being able to knock the dummy off of its post. That was infuriating, but I had to remember that I wasn't going to master everything, nor was I strong enough to be in the first place. I was a human and not a demon after all, let alone a brute demon. I was learning how to better defend myself. I walked into the room and let out a sigh. Today was tough, and I could tell it was only going to get much tougher later in the week. I felt my feet slide across the floor in exhaustion, not used to the strenuous work I had to do. I sat down on the bench in front of the fireplace, staring into the flames as I let relaxation finally hit my body. The warmth of the fire gave me a dull sense of calm, causing me to sigh and lean back against the bench.
You have done well, child.
Okay, who are you? I don't want to deal with any more otherworldly spirits here. Huh? You again.
Fear not. I come to observe you as you observe me.
What? So he's the flames? He's a fireplace? I tilted my head, confused with what the voice meant. I looked around and scoured the room before turning my gaze back to the fire. Within it, I could barely make out the outline of eyes, which caused me to freeze in my spot. Oh. What the hell? You're the fire?
I am a flame, but I am not the fire you gaze upon. I merely look through it to judge you, and the one named Maurice.
Still, really cool voice. It's like all otherworldly and stuff. They look kind of lizard-like. Or snake-like. I completely forgot about Sam's true demon name after a year. So, You're judging us? Why? For what exactly?
That will be known soon. When the time is right, the one destined to take my power will be tested.
I stared into the fire, lost and confused. Why were we being judged? Was this some sort of trick by the Demon Lord? As if I thought of that, the flame intensified slightly.
The Demon Lord, an evil being of this world. He is a curse plaguing this land.
You hate the Demon Lord as well?
He is not worthy of life, but I care not enough to rise from the darkness to rid the world of him myself.
Well, that's selfish. What do you mean?
I have been generous with you, child. You must now be patient.
Before I could even think of to protest, the eyes hidden within the flames vanished and the voice disappeared from my mind, as if it were part of a dream I had awoken from. I shook my head and rubbed my head, taking it in. Some sort of spirit or guardian was watching over us. Apparently, it seemed to be strong enough to defeat the Demon Lord himself. Was it possible? Even more so, was going to test one of us to take its power? My mind instantly went to Sam. There was no reason for me to be the one to be tested, so it had to be him. How would he be tested, though? I shook my head. This was too confusing to think about right now. However, as I sat back and let my mind reorganize itself, I suddenly realized something. Where was Sam? I stood and walked to the door, opening it and peeking out into the hall. Sam was nowhere in sight. What the? Sam was really late in coming back. From what we had discussed, he should have been back, or at least on the way. However, the distance to their training area was not that far. I began to wander the halls, trying to find where they were. Luckily, Sam made a lot of noise.
Fuck you!
Okay then. Sam? I rushed towards the noise, stopping at an open door. Peering in, I gasped as I saw the war room in a disarray as everyone seemed to hug the walls, watching the chaos that was breaking out in the middle of the room. Oh, that's so cool! Sam and Sarah were clashing sword and spear, with Sam's face full of rage and Sarah's expression void of any emotion.
You're too slow! Faster!
Want me to go faster? Fine!
Before my eyes, Sam and Sarah became barely visible shadows through the air, their weapons clang rapidly, almost like multiple bullets crashing all at once as they arced towards one another. What is going on? The Incubi and the Wives moved towards the door to join me, still watching the fight.
Sam was about to leave for the night, but then that jerk-ass Sero called him a weak coward. Well, you know how Sam is. He did actually try to walk away, but then Sero said that the war was his fault, so that got this whole shitstorm started. They've been at it ever since.
Huh. Can't we all just get along? The hell? I looked back at Sarah and Sam, still unable to make either of them out as they clashed and fought. My eyes locked on Diana, seeing her lean against the far wall with crossed arms. As I examined her, her eyes seemed to follow the fight almost masterfully. And she's not even gonna stop it. I mean, sure, it's good training, but still. While it might be in part their fault, the Demon Lord has always been crazy, so it's not like they can blame them with that. Was she able to see what the hell was happening despite their lightning speed? Why was she just watching anyway? Sam, stop it!
Keep at it, Seto. Don't let him stop.
Oh my god. What the hell? I ran to Diana, despite not taking her eyes off of the fight. Why aren't we stopping this, Diana? Huh? Why would I attack her? That's dumb. As much as I want to. Wait and watch. I still wasn't understanding. Why was I not getting an answer? I turned my gaze to the fight, desperate to try and see what Diana wanted me to witness.
Are you that weak, Incubus? You haven't landed a blow on me once!
Shut your fucking mouth!
Is his rage gonna come in and boom?
Like father, like son!
Oh no. I didn't understand why Sarah was egging him on and insulting him, but Sam seemed up for the battle regardless of the fact, using the insults as inspirational rage. However, from the faint outline of Sam that I could see, I noticed something off about him. He was surrounded by a heavy green and red mixed aura. The more I watched, the more the aura seemed to build and take shape around Sam's body. Is this... Oh... The flames? I couldn't tell what it was, but it looked almost alive.
Enough!
All at once, Sam and Sarah slid to opposite sides of the open space, panting and gasping for air. Around Sarah was a faint white light that was diminishing with each breath he took. Around Sam, however, was a clear view of a tense red and green aura. It seemed to flicker around Sam like flames, but it didn't seem to die even when the battle being over.
What the hell? What is that?
Zero.
Diana pushed off of the wall and walked towards Zero, wrapping an arm around him and making him gasp at the gesture. He looked to her in shock as she turned to Sam with a hard gaze.
It would seem that we have much to do before the siege.
What are you talking about? Diana seemed to ignore my question as she turned and began to walk towards the... Oh, I'm getting mad now. I at least deserve answers. And she turned and began to walk towards the room's exit with Sarah in her arm. Sam, on the other hand, dropped to the floor and sat back against the wall, trying to calm down. Instinctively, I rushed over to him. Sam shut his eyes as he forced himself to take deep breaths. Each one seemed less labored than the last, but I could tell that he was working to calm his rage. Sam? The aura around Sam finally seemed to die down before Sam let out a heavy sigh and pressed his head against the wall. I could tell the exhaustion was weighing him heavily, so I simply sat beside him, waiting.
Sam, what is going on?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sam, you had a weird aura around you.
I said I don't know!
Sam closed his eyes and pressed his back against the wall, letting his head drop to his chest. He genuinely didn't seem to know what was going on, but I became concerned. What was his aura so strange? My thoughts ran to the voice from the flame. Was this the start of whatever test he had in mind? Why were Diane and Sarah involved, though? Sam finally opened his eyes and looked to me. His iris flashed gold at the sight of me, but quickly returned to emerald green as he let out a sigh. Ask if he's okay again. I needed to know if he was okay. I watched, however, as Sam let out another sigh, closed his eyes, and didn't reply. My worry increased, but soon enough Sam simply stood up and I stood as well with a frown. Sam gently took my hand and walked to lead me out of the room.
Hey, hold on!
Shut up, Squirt.
Squirt, what the hell?
Matthew, hey, chill!
I looked back to see Norrin and Damien holding Matthew back from pouncing at Sam, but I continued with Sam out of the room. As we walked down the hall, I looked to Sam, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes grow heavier and heavier. He had used a lot of energy. Oh, okay then. I know where this is going. I wrapped my arm around him and guided him back to our room, sitting in bed and eventually flopping back onto it with me. As he let out a relaxed grunt, I kissed his cheek. Everything okay?
Yeah. Just exhausted. Man, fuck that guard.
I smiled and hugged him, ushering him to wrap his arms around me and kiss my forehead.
Something really has been weird, though.
I agree. Both of us went silent as we became lost in thought. I knew Sam was trying to determine what happened, but I was concerned over what the voice in the flame said and how that reflected on Sam. The nightmare I had made a little more sense, but why was I involved? Sam and I went to bed that night, both unsure what was going on and mildly fearful of what was happening. We couldn't speak about it without knowing all of the pieces. We both knew better than to take stabs in the dark. My night was uneventful, but morning wasn't the same. Oh, dang. I didn't expect to wake up with a hand over my mouth with an arm tied around my waist. I tried to focus my vision, but as the sensation of my situation set in, I gasped and struggled to see who was keeping me captive.
Quiet.
What the... Okay, I'm so confused. I stared wide-eyed, seeing Sarah ahead of us, as he kept his mouth shut and held me against him with his other arm. What was even stranger was that he was using his holy magic, disabling me from using any of my energy to fight back. What the hell? I looked ahead to see a sight I have never wanted to see. Diana straddling over Sam's waist as he slept, looking down at him with pure concentration. What was she doing now? Did this have something to do with what happened last night?
Patience, child.
Well, why the secrecy? Why can't we just know? I froze at the sound of the voice in my head. The voice was in on this act too?
She's merely following instructions. No harm will come to him.
How am I supposed to trust someone if I don't even know who they are? But I'll be patient, I guess. This was another test, another trial Sam had to go through. What kind of elaborate scheme was this? Looking at Diana, however, I could tell that she didn't want to do whatever that voice had instructed. Her lips were curved in an almost disgusted grimace as she looked down at Sam. Diana let out a small sigh before pressing her index finger on the top of her head and dragging it into the top of her head and dragging it down her face, between her eyes, and all the way down to her crotch. What the? The line that formed in Diana's skin seemed to grow and envelop her in a strange purple light, changing her skin and almost shrinking her form. As the magic finally settled and faded away, I gasped at the sight. What? Oh no! No! Diana's new body was my own, only without clothes. Every curve, every crevice of her body matched mine, and even the voice that came out of her mouth perfectly mirrored my own. No! Me saying it in my voice. Oh, this hurts. Sam, wake up. I felt nauseous watching her run her fingers around Sam's hair, just like I would. How the hell did she know anything about how Sam and I interacted intimately? This was creepy and gross, and I felt myself naturally struggle against Sarah to be free. Sam's eyes spluttered open at just the sight of me straddling over his hips. As Diana gave him my perfect smile, I mentally panicked. What was he going to do? Would he fall for this? No way, there was no way. Sam's eyes trailed up and down Diana's body, just like how he would with me whenever he saw me without clothes. My heart was breaking a bit at the sight.
Get the fuck off me.
And then me and my voice, wait, what? Get! I gasped as Sam suddenly sat up, gripped Diana's neck, and began to squeeze. Instinctively, Sarah tightened his hold on me, most likely struggling to obey the previous commands to stay put.
What the fuck do you think you're doing, bitch?
I don't want to. Sam, stop it. As a part of me felt relieved that Sam could see whatever illusion Diana threw on herself, the smaller part of me began to fear Diana's neck being snapped because of it. She continued to act like me to perfection as he gripped Sam's wrist. I was mildly scared to see Sam holding Diana, who looked like a copycat of me. In a strange, messed up way, it was like watching a movie where I was a character in the scene watching the man I loved act with the actors playing me. So weird. The more I watched Sam crush Diana's neck, the more I could imagine him doing that to me, which made me fearful. He would never hurt me, but to see it happening to someone who looked and acted like me was another thing.
If this is some kind of fucked up joke to you, I will end you right now!
Diana began to cry, most likely losing air from Sam's death choke on her. As she coughed, her body began to quake from lack of oxygen. I don't want to. Please, Sam, it's me.
Shut the fuck up!
Sam released a hand from Diana's neck and pushed it onto her stomach, lifting her off of him and shoving her off of his lap and against the far wall. Oh man. Diana crumpled against the floor, curling herself over as she coughed violently and shook from the pain that obviously racked through her. Sam, however, jumped out of bed and walked at Diana, glaring down at her.
You're not her. Where is she, Diana?
Diana looked at him, tears rushing down my eyes. She gripped her neck. Sam, it's me. Stop it. I hate this. Sam quickly lifted his foot, causing Diana to flinch and cover herself with her hands over her head, bracing for impact. While I expected Sam to fall for Diana's tricks at the sight of my weakness, he let the kick he was charging up fly into Diana's stomach, slamming her against the wall. He didn't stop, however, slamming his foot again into her, rebounding her against the wall like a soccer ball. Oh, this is terrible. Wait, how long have I been recording for? Oh, it's only 34 minutes. Alright. I don't know.
Where is she?
My body began to quake at the sight of Sam kicking Diana, who was very much continued to act like me despite the barrage of pain Sam was inflicting on her. This was messed up and wrong. Why was Diana doing this? Why was she letting this happen?
She is following my instructions as I demanded.
Well, I feel awful. Fuck you, directions. I began to grow fearful of Sam, instinctively placing myself in Diana's place. It was only natural since she was acting like me right now. Deep in my heart, I knew Sam would never do this to me. But the fear began to fester at the sight of him beating down an image of me.
Fear not, child. He knows very well who he is attacking. I can hear his heart crying as yours is now.
What do you mean?
He despises doing this, but you have become the priority of the illusion. He pretends to see the succubus as she really is, as he tries to get his answer. A truly interesting demon.
Okay. I shut my eyes. Diana was doing a job, and Sam obviously saw through it. He wasn't attacking me, he was attacking Diana for tricking him and assuming she was hiding me from him. I only opened my eyes again to see Sam lift Diana by the throat and pin her to the wall, forming a sword in his free hand and lining the tip between her eyes. Even with the blade mere inches away from her face, Diana continued the act, crying and shaking in fear. How dare she! How dare she! How would she even know? I'm not even gonna say that.
I will kill you!
Within a blink, the hold on me vanished and Sam flew back from Diana, releasing her and slamming into the far wall. I crumpled to the ground and quickly looked up to see Sarah holding Diana close to his side as his form emanated a holy white aura. His eyes burned intense, deadly hatred as white-tinted magical barriers surrounded his and Diana's bodies.
Enough!
Sam shook his head and jumped up, but at the sight of the real me, he instantly dropped his sword and tackled me, wrapping his arms around me and hugging me tightly.
Holy shit! You're okay!
Sam! I stared into his shoulder, feeling him shake violently as he held me. My body couldn't help but shudder with him, feeling every ounce of his love as he gripped me tightly. He knew where his heart belonged, and it led him back to me, even with unbelievable odds attempting to sway him. I wrapped my arms around Sam and buried my face into his shoulder, nodding to him. I'm right here, Sam. Sam refused to let go, digging his fingers into my shirt and pulling me even closer still to his chest. I could feel his heartbeat pound against his chest as he pressed me against him. I, however, peeked over Sam's shoulder to see Diana shift back from my image to her own form, collapsing against Sarah. With ease, Sarah lifted Diana into his arms like she was a bride who had fainted, but continued to glare at the back of Sam's head. Finally, Sam lifted his head and looked at Sarah, growing a glare of his own.
Tell that bitch to stay away from me if she wants to keep breathing.
I can hear you, brute.
Tell Sam the truth? Sam was completely right to be angry. He had every right to want her to stay away from him. However, he also deserved to know the truth of why they did what they did. Sam, they had to. Sam looked at me with a confused look of mixed anger, still emanating from his rage as Diana, no doubt. I gripped Sam's shoulders and forced him to fully face me. There's this voice that keeps saying you're being tested. It said that Diana and Sarah were following its orders and testing you. I knew it was making little to no sense, but it was the truth of the matter. Sam had to believe me. His eyes continued to flood with confusion, making me worried.
She's telling the truth.
I didn't ask you, bitch.
She doesn't need your permission to speak, mutt.
Sam closed his eyes and pressed his lips together, most likely taking in what they had said before he glared at Sarah and Diana. This is really off topic, but Sarah's been pretty volatile towards James and Sam, but when it came to Eric and Damien, he was actually pretty chill. I wonder if he'll be with Matthew. Sam closed his eye and pressed his lips together, most likely taking what they had said before he glared at Sarah and Diana.
Why?
Sarah continued to glare at Sam in silence, but Diana lifted her head and looked to Sam from Sarah's arms.
Because it said it will ensure our victory.
Just using him. Sam raised an eyebrow, slowly starting to believe that this was a false reason, but I held his arm, looking to him in hope and earnest. Sam took a moment to look at me before sighing and shaking his head.
What said that?
Some powerful being. I don't know why, but I can feel that this being is more powerful than any of us.
Is that it?
Diana nodded and rested her head to Sero's chest, causing him to hug her body against him.
It won't speak its name, but we're certain we'll find out what it is.
Sam nodded before looking to the ground.
Can you go now?
Without another word, Sero walked out of the room with Diana, most likely to help her recover from the training day ahead.
I'm going to kick the shit out of him in training.
At last we were alone. I let out a sigh and wrapped my arms around Sam, laying my forehead against his shoulder. You okay?
No, I'm not. Whatever this thing that keeps testing me is, it got you involved.
Sam wrapped his arm around me and buried his head in my hair, letting out an aggravated sigh.
I'm sorry. Diana was pretending to be you, and I just...
I could hear the regret in his voice, slightly breaking my heart. I knew deep down that he would never hurt me and that he was just trying to find me. I was wise enough to know the reason for his anger. It's okay, Sam. Sam was distraught and I needed to ease his worries. I understood him perfectly. I hugged Sam to me and kissed his cheek as he trembled in my arms. He wrapped his arms back around me and simply let silence pass between us.
What the fuck is going on?
I don't know. I didn't know what to say, so I simply held him until it was time to train. I headed towards the west side of the castle, knowing Sergeant would either be there outside expecting me or would arrive there shortly after me. Nevertheless, I was ready to train again with him. I think I'll leave it... Well... Alright, I'll do 5 more minutes. What I wasn't expecting was to see another male on the field branding a large warhammer. He seemed very intimidating, but I seemed to be less threatened than when I first met Sergeant. He, however, had a hard gaze in my direction. Who?
Human! You do not belong here!
Kinda sound like the Flames. I stared at the stranger, seeing him raise his warhammer and slam it into the ground in front of him. As the hammer impacted, the earth began to quake with a large crack and the earth began to form, tearing its way towards me. Jump! Oh, no, it's stuck! Ah!
Really? You would run from this?
Darn it! I was trying to! My thing froze! But
Get back inside. We're done here. I'm not training a coward.
You know what? I don't care. I'm gonna redo this. 1 second. I know I'm a cheater, but I don't care. That wasn't fair. It was a computer malfunction. You ever had a hard gaze in my direction?
Human!
Attack. I glared at my attacker, feeling the spark in my soul start to burn as I began to rush forward. With each step, the fire within continued to grow larger, increasing the energy flowing through within my body and forcing me forward. My feet skipped over the sides of the growing crack in the earth, soon becoming inaudible in light. The closer I got to my new opponent, within seconds I was in the front of my attacker with a raised fist. I slammed my fist into the being's chest, but quickly broke out of my rage state as my hit didn't send him flying back. The pain that jolted through my hand caused me to jump back and grip my fingers tightly. It was like trying to deck a steel wall. I was pretty sure I'd broken my hand from the force I put it behind it. Yeah, it hurts! I don't know. What the hell? I quickly looked at my opponent as he lifted his warhammer and arced it to slam down on my body. The pain with my hand coursed through my body, leaving me frozen.
Enough!
I messed up again! The hammer stopped its descent towards me, freezing right above my head. I stared at the surface that would have crushed me, slightly shaking at the realization of the situation. I could have been pulverized. I slowly looked over to Sergeant to see him walking over from the forest line. The stranger lifted his warhammer and rested it on his shoulder as he stepped back from me. This was planned?
Your hand all right?
No, it's broken. I looked down at my hand at last, fully taking in the sight of how mangled it had become. It was quickly swelling and bruising, and I could tell a dislocation of a couple of fingers. Oh my god, that's terrible. Maybe it was the adrenaline rushing through me that blocked me from screaming at the pain. Or maybe this was me getting stronger. Sergeant grimaced at the sight and walked over, taking my hand and observing it.
Yeah, it's fucked up pretty good.
Oh no.
I'm sorry, sir.
Nah, you did your job. Stand down for now, Danthulir.
I looked to the stranger to see him nod and take another step back away from me. Sergeant, however, grasped my hand, causing a jolt of pain rush down through my arm. Ow! Jeez, he grasped my fingers, weaving his fingers between mine and burying his fingertips into my knuckles, causing another rush of pain. Instinctively, I tried to pull away, but his grip was tight, warning me to stay put or I would cause more damage to the already wounded hand. I stared at my hand, seeing Sergeant form red energy around it. It was cravely uncomfortable to feel the muscles and bones in my hands shift and shudder under my skin, and I felt my hand slowly healing and the swelling die down. Soon enough, my hand looked completely undamaged. Oh, is that a new trick? Are we going to heal ourselves? Sergeant released my hand and crossed his arms.
There. Better?
I observed my hand a little longer, bending my fingers and moving my hand through the air. There was no pain, nor was there any discomfort. It was completely healed. I looked up at Sergeant and smiled, nodding. Yeah, thank you. Sergeant simply gave me a simple nod before becoming stern.
Now, why do you think your attack didn't work?
I took a moment to think of the answer. There are many things that could have been wrong. I looked at Danthulir, observing him now that I could have the chance without my rage-tinted vision. He definitely looked strong, but not strong enough to be a wall of steel. Then again, he was no training dummy either, and I couldn't dissipate one of them even after a full day of training. He had pretty tough-looking pecs. I pressed my lips together, trying to come up with an answer. I aimed for his chest? It made sense. His chest was built like a fortress. Add on the fact that there was obviously a demon and you had a recipe for a normal-sized Hercules. There was no way I was going to break through to his ribs. Sergeant nodded.
He's my right-hand guy. Trained him for years and helped him become a living tank. Not even a sharp blade can cut through his chest.
I stared wide-eyed at Danthulir as he nodded and pounded his chest with a fist. I could almost hear the hardness of his skin bounce underneath his armor. Sergeant stepped towards Danthulir and turned to face me, pointing a thumb at him.
You're fighting a demon. We're not weak like you humans are. We are faster, stronger, and no more than your entire race could ever understand.
I glared a bit. The insults at my race were uncalled for, but Sergeant crossed his arms and settling into his powerful stance to remind me of who was in charge.
But demons are mortal. We all have our flaws. You just need to know how to find them.
His arm? Or his legs? His horns! Okay, that's actually not... It's a good idea, but also a bad idea. Well, how am I supposed to find them? He attacked me as soon as he saw me.
Welcome to war, human. No one gives a shit if you're ready or not, and they'd rather see you dead than in their way.
A harsh reality. He was right. I was going to go into war and I was going to get attacked without a second thought, especially because I was human. I nodded and looked to the floor, causing Sergeant to let out a sigh.
Listen, there's this story we used to pass around in our tribes to inspire our young. Want to hear it?
Sure. I looked back up at Sergeant, raising an eyebrow but nodding out of curiosity. Sergeant stretched his neck to the side and looked to the sky.
Long time ago, a pair of demons were after the marriage of a grand chief. One was as strong as 1,000 men and could lift an entire castle off the ground with her hand. The other was meek, but he was as loyal as a person could possibly be.
Eh?
The chief demanded that they fight for his hand, and so, a mighty duel was called at the edge of the highest mountain. Both demons faced off, and when the battle began, the mighty demon struck first, causing the meek demon to defend himself.
I began to imagine it in my head, a large battle between a monster demoness and a small, frail demon. The demoness had the upper hand, but something told me the meeker demon would win. Sergeant continued.
The weak demon ducked and dodged every attack the larger demon threw at him until finally, he spotted a weakness and used it. With all of his might, the demon plunged his small dagger into his opponent's hand, rendering her weaponless. The smaller demon won and became one of the most powerful brute demons of his time with the noble chieftain at his side.
Wow. Sergeant raised an eyebrow at me.
Do you understand now? There's a reason why weaker demons still survive in battle. Just use your brain.
I nodded, understanding his lesson. I had to take my time and find a weakness. Xanthaler was a new opponent, someone I didn't know. Everything about him was a mystery to me, and I had to learn about him to properly fight back. Sergeant nodded to me before walking away towards the tree line, stopping and turning to lean against the bark of the tree he managed to land by.
Xanthaler, beat her ass to the ground.
Oh, fine. Wait, what? I suddenly looked at Xanthaler, seeing him quickly take up his warhammer and attempt to slam it down on my head. Luckily, I was able to jump back in time, seeing the hammer once again slam onto the ground and form a small crater in the earth. While he puts his hammer in the ground, it's the best time to attack. Because he has to use his strength to do that, and both arms are both being used, so yeah. Go for, not his stomach, but his legs or his arms. That could have been me. I focused my gaze on the Xanthaler, preparing a dodge of another attack. My rage flared and the red tint in my vision came back, causing my opponent to be covered in a black aura. What surprised me, however, was how it was configured. Certain parts of his body were pulsing with energy, while others barely had the black aura emanating from them. I hadn't noticed it before up until I focused on it. I barely reacted in time to a second attack from Xanthaler's warhammer because of how focused I became. I had to put the battle into perspective. I was fighting him, but at the same time I had to study him. It was the most difficult multitasking I had ever had to do. The barrage of attacks continued, and I continued to duck and dodge each one. At the same time, I tried to find some way to fight back. I couldn't dodge forever. Then I saw it. His warhammer wasn't glowing at all. If I was correct, then it was a simple warhammer. There was my answer, but what was I going to do with it? I quickly noted the build of it. It was a solid hammer with an intricately shaped wrapped pummel. However, there had to be a weak spot on it, something that would break it, like an Achilles heel. As I dodged another attack, I managed to glimpse a small crack in the hammer. It was small, but I knew anything about cracking material that I knew of, then I had to apply my attack directly onto it. I had a chance to split the hammer in two, open. I smirked as I fully let my rage consume my thoughts, making the warhammer my target. I charged at Xanthaler at full speed and leapt into the air, bringing my hand back while he recovered from his previous attack. With the crack of the hammer as my mark, I swung and slammed my hand into it, causing it to rupture and split open.
What?
The only thing left of the hammer was the pummel, which left his hand wide open for me. I snarled and kicked at his wrist, making him drop it and step back.
Enough!
Immediately, Xanthaler jumped back, rubbing his hand with an amused but slightly proud smirk on his face. I jumped back as well, focused on breathing and calming down. As a red haze vanished from his sight, I looked to the approaching sergeant. I blushed a bit as he gave me a couple claps of approval.
Now you're thinking like a warrior.
I couldn't stop the wide-arcing smile across my face. I felt extremely proud that I was praised like a warrior. I wasn't anywhere close to how Xanthaler was, but for the work I had done, I was getting there. As the day went on, I was given more obstacles to deal with. I had to maneuver around dummies to get to my target, and then fight off two attackers at once. It was a mind-boggling experience, but I managed to get through them in the end. However, I could tell something was on Sergeant's mind. By the end of training, Sergeant couldn't tear his eyes away from the castle. I eventually looked over to barely see a figure standing by a balcony. Diana's watching, and she's judging. She's judging everybody. Who was he staring so hard at? A hand on my shoulder broke me from my thoughts, causing me to look over at the sergeant in surprise.
You're done for the day. Get some rest. Prepare yourself for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think I'll leave it here for today. Yep. So, that's part 2. We're gonna be on to part 3 soon. And since I will be leaving for Mexico in like the next 3 weeks, I really do need to actually put these out. I'm gonna try to put these out as quickly as possible, hopefully, so that we can get through them before I leave because I don't know if I'll be able to record or not while I'm on vacation. So, alright then. You have several things to look through. Not to mention the fact that Sam's being tested by flames of a wise old man that looks like a snake-like eyes. And we're getting brute strength. So we could be brutes just like Sam, but not really. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!